Welcome. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Peak Alliance for a Sustainable Future, we're thrilled to welcome you to the Sustainability in Progress meeting, proudly presenting this month by Pikes Peak Permaculture. We're coming to you live on YouTube today, and we invite you to stick around for the Q&A session following this presentation. Your questions and insights are always welcome. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that the land that we are on is unceded territory and the ancestral homeland of the Ute peoples, who have stewarded this land throughout many previous generations, gathering at the base of Sun Mountain, Tava, or Pikes Peak, America's mountain. We also acknowledge these lands were occupied by the Arapaho and the Cheyenne. It's important to recognize and respect the enduring relationships that exist between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. And I encourage you all to engage with these communities. Sustainability in Progress monthly meetings are brought to you by Peak Alliance for a Sustainable Future, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that strives to promote regional sustainability in the Pikes Peak region and to advance the regional sustainability plan called Looking to Our Future Pikes Peak Region 2030. Energy, one of the stretch goals in the regional plan, is in line with our topic today. If you'd like to revisit today's conversation or share it with others, the recording will be available soon on the Peak Environment podcast. Please be sure to listen to the other community podcasts at studio809podcast.com.
Thanks for the introduction there, Becky. Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Richardson. I'm with Pikes Peak Permaculture. Pikes Peak Permaculture is presenting today on energy. We are a 501c3 nonprofit serving Southern Colorado in the nature and ways of permaculture design. We feel permaculture design opens up the community to understanding how to have cleaner water, regenerate lands, and also just, may I have that piece of paper? I want to get this right, you guys. Okay, yeah. So, we're here to build stronger connections with our landscape and all inhabitants, regenerating land, like I said, water, but also food systems, and making sure our region thrives for generations to come. We proudly work with community members, with schools, and other organizations to further promote permaculture design in the region. You can check out about more what we do at pikespeakpermaculture.org. And I have some QR codes here on the screen here. That's Pikes Peak Permaculture's website. We also I'm a co-host for Peak Environment Podcast, and this episode will be recorded on the Peak Environment Podcast, and you can find that at studio809communitypodcast.com. And I encourage you to listen to all the community podcasts as well. And Peak Alliance for Sustainable Future, we are going to be presenting in line with their Pikes Peak Regional Sustainability Plan. And the sustainability plan can be found also on that QR code. So a little bit of background about permaculture. If you're not familiar with permaculture, permaculture is a way that we educate the community in a whole system design approach that takes into consideration nature's natural energy flows. That could be forms of energy from the sun or the wind, but that's also through people and food systems. We teach you too how to utilize resources in a system that maximizes efficiency. Permaculture is based on ethics of people care, earth care, and future care, and we have principles and practices that we teach people to capture and store energy, for example. That's one of our primary principles, but also using and valuing renewable resources as they should be, ethically. And through permaculture education, Pikes Peak Permaculture is building a community right now of other permaculture people, and we're working towards building a community that's striving for resilience for the future. Now, I talked about different forms of energy. The energy that I'm going to be talking about today is what I like to call artificial energy. It's the energy that we have created, and this began back 600 BC. Energy has had a really interesting transition into becoming electricity, or we were able to use different materials during the industrial movement to get to where we are today. Thomas Edison, he had invented the light bulb in 1879, and just a few years later, it was introduced to Colorado Springs. Now, 2 years after that, we started to see street lamps, and you had your flickety light switches come about. And a lot of people actually said, wow, this is almost like another gold rush. It's coming upon so fast that a lot of people started to understand that maybe there was an enterprise coming in. There was a little bit of economic injustices coming into the rates that people were being charged for these. So come along a little while longer, and there was a woman named Lillian Hart Carr, and she was a really amazing woman. And if you don't know her and you live in this area, I encourage you to look up her history. She's done a lot of wonderful things, and one of the things that she said was, we need to make sure that Colorado Springs Utilities, our utility company that provides our electricity, is going to be citizen-owned. That way we have rights of what is happening in our community, and that we make the rates affordable and reliable, but also ethical. And so, fast forward now to today, we have a lot of different sources of electricity and energy that's being, majority of it is coming from fossil fuels. And as much as we'd like to think that we have a lot of solar and renewable energies right now, we are still very heavily dependent on coal. And Ray D. Nixon Power Plant is one of the plants that we get our electricity from, and it's the largest source. They also have 2 natural gas turbines there. We did have a second plant, and that was Martin Drake Power Plant, but as you probably are aware, 2 years ago that was closed down. The land is still owned by Colorado Springs Utilities. They do have 6 turbines, gas turbines on that location, and I think there is some works into regenerate that land so it can become a community asset. We also have some energy through hydroelectric, not very much, and a lot of people don't understand that petroleum that you put in your gas, that's also a fossil fuel that is an energy source. And last year in 2024, I apologize. I forgot the institute. It's something with the Energy Administration, I believe, but they said that 6.1 million gallons of gasoline a day are being pumped into our vehicles. And I know a lot of people are going out and they're buying electric vehicles, but there's also a lot of embodied energy into that as well. And if you are not getting your sources from your home where you plug your vehicle in, if your source is not green energy, you are still consuming coal to power your vehicle, even though it is electric. I just came back from the 2030 Breckenridge Climate Summit, and they were exploring energy sources. And one of the things that I learned there is, due to our region, they're really looking into moving into more of a nuclear or geothermal type microgrid. And so that's kind of being explored right now. Also in Colorado Springs Utilities, they have a lot of expansions from the transport stations are getting bigger. There's a lot of battery storage components coming in and being built to hold more energy, especially from the renewable sources. Whoops. My hands are a little tricky today. Sorry about that. Okay, we're going to go back up here to where I was. Okay, so why am I telling you all of this? Why am I telling you all these different energy sources? Well, I want you to understand the complexity of the system that is upon us. And there are many municipalities out there right now who are trying to transition into renewable. We also have renewable energy here in wind energy, but there's just 2 locations, and that supplies about 60 megawatts of energy, renewable energy. And to put that into context, I'm not going to really go into depth about wattage or a lot of the other components like voltage or amps, but I do want people to understand that for every megawatt of energy, that can power 1,000 homes. So that seems like quite a bit right there of energy. And then we have also solar. And so there was a big project down on the southeast, right along the Rocky Mountain edge is a huge solar array farm that was just put in a couple years back. It began in 2023, December. That's when we started to see that power. And then we have some other solar in the area too. There's a such thing called as a community solar gardens that you see up here. And those are locations that have solar on site and that people can apply to get into that. So for instance, if you live in an apartment and you cannot put solar on your apartment, you can fill out an application to get into these community gardens as well. And we have some other solar arrays, but again, just really small amount of megawattage. So our community is right now at kind of close to peak demand, and we keep building these systems and we keep making them bigger and bigger, but that just, if you build it, what happens? Well, Jevons paradox strikes again, and hopefully everyone in this room knows what that is, and if not, listening to. Jevons paradox is basically the rebound effect. Think about when and I'll just tell you, this gentleman here, he was growing up during the industrial times, and he started to see that when the coal-fired furnaces started to get more efficient and started to get cheaper, he noticed that more people wanted them. And so as more people started to get these systems because they're cheaper, it actually became a detriment. Oh my goodness, sorry. It became a detriment to the communities. And same thing's happening when, you make your cars cheaper and electronics cheaper. People are going to want to have more of that. Same thing, you open up your lanes in a highway, those cars are going to come in and feel that, because that just is what happens with the Jevons paradox theory. And it's a theory that's been around again for a long time, and time after time, it's just something that just happens. Okay, so why again too am I telling you about Jevons paradox? Well, we have an energy problem. We see it in the news. People are trying to figure out ways to save energy, create more energy, lower our bills. And then we have all of these conditions, but what really is under the surface of a lot of changes right now is we're building these infrastructures, these technology infrastructures, and now we're welcoming in the era of artificial intelligence. And this is just a list of some that you can see, but it was, this has been popping up since 2020, and now hundreds of programs are being developed requiring infrastructure to house all that data. Now, data has been, data centers have been around for a while. I mean, the internet's been there, but I want to read something that a Harvard energy expert said just recently about AI data centers. He said, data centers have been the backbone of our internet for decades with relatively small amounts of energy use. With the introduction of ChatGPT a few years back, the size of these facilities have truly grown. Some of these new facilities are being developed much like the electricity for our large cities. So these huge facilities are taking massive amount of energy. Now, I showed you the megawatts, 1,000 megawatts can house or can take care of a lot of homes. But if you look at these systems that are being introduced into our communities, we're looking at upwards of 500 megawatts, which is it's just insane. That's 500 million or 500,000 homes that could be energized, but instead, these are being built all across the nation right now. There's a lot of infrastructure that's being built through our utilities companies too, and due to old laws, that is something that we are paying for. So I'm pretty sure that you all have started to see some increases, these new energy wise rates that are coming out. We're going to talk about that in a minute and why it might be a concern for everyone listening. These are some new articles that just showed up this year. And I just want to read these too for the audience. Data centers are proliferating, so are concerns about their effects on Colorado's environment. And data centers will use twice as much energy by 2030, driven by AI. And data centers are already increasing your energy bills. We have the receipts. So these are the articles that we're seeing across many municipalities across the country. And not only is it because of the environmental or not only is it the environmental problems that we're seeing with this, with the water intake. We have a NOVA Center that was built here up in Northeast Colorado Springs, where the amphitheater is. And NOVA is a data center that's out of Texas, and they came here. The Colorado Springs Utilities has had the citizens funded for that project to get the electricity out there. They're using 6,000 gallons of water a day, and then the load, the electric load that they're needing is upwards of 150 megawatts. So, to me, it seems like we've got these questions now. What's the likelihood that wind energy or solar energy or both are going to meet these future demands if we keep allowing these data centers to come in? Also, are data centers a setback for green energy transition? And I ask that because just recently in the Midwest, a municipality has reversed their coal firing closures because of the demand for data centers. So to me, that just seems like we're reversing policies to create this system. But did we vote in on this system? I don't think so. And there's a bright idea that I want to share with you guys today after I have a sip of water here. So this is a statement from the Peak Alliance for Sustainable Futures Regional Sustainability Plan. And I'd like to underline that one part of it because it states decreasing our overall energy use through conservation and energy efficiency. That to me means, as conservation means, we need to minimize, we need to lower our impact. And especially so because, like I said, Colorado Springs utilities for our residents here are increasing our rates. They call it energy-wise rates. And it's basically in response because of the demand, because there's so much demand, especially too during certain hours of the day. So now from 5 to 9, these are called peak hours. Our utilities company is going to be charging double our rates. And then from 9 p.m. to 4 p.m. during the day, we are going to have a reduced rate, which is very similar to the rate that we are actually being charged right now. This is excluding holidays and weekends. But again, I think that Colorado Springs is just trying to move us into more of a behavioral modification or just to help this system because during, again, peak hours, if our energy from our storage is out, then and we don't have renewable or solar being charged at the moment, then we have to go to backup. And this is concerning because we could have brownouts or blackouts. Now, with these rates that are going to be increasing, I know that sometimes you might have some difficulties with paying these because, I mean, let's face it, we cook in the evenings between the hours of 5 to 9. A lot of people work jobs and they come home and they want to, relax, watch TV, or they want to wash their clothes for the next day. We're moving into an area where we're going to have to get out of that pattern. But if you're not able to, there are some rebates and assistance that the state has and federal government has provided. Governor Polis just came out with this tool here. It's called the Colorado Energy Savings Navigator. It's a navigation tool that looks over 600 rebates and over 18 federally assisted programs. And so basically, you just go to this website, you put in your information, and it provides you with all of the resources that are available to you in the state and federally. A few of them, for example, there's the LEAP program, and that's really assisting people who have low income. There's also Colorado Energy Office Weatherization Assistance Program, and I bring that one up because that one is offering free home edits for auditing your electricity use and looking at ways that you can minimize your waste. They also will, given that you're in the income bracket, they will also pay for some of those replacement services. And Project Cope, I like to put this one on here too because this is a specific fund that's donation-based. You might have seen that on your utilities bill where you can check donate 5, donate 10, but this is for our community members who might have experienced an emergency or a loss. So it's a nice resource to have too. All right, so enough about energy, electric energy. Let's go back to permaculture energy, where we're talking about wind and solar and food. Let's talk about ways we can conserve our energy as well. I'm going to go over in depth these few things here. I'm going to talk about minimizing and reducing our wasteful energy, altering our habits during seasonal patterns. And so this is because of those on-peak hours. We're going to have different types of suggestions for you to minimize energy as well during certain times. Passive design systems. This is something we teach in permaculture that basically means using less or pulling off of your conventional heating and cooling systems. This is basically what you would see in a zero waste home design. And then we're going to talk about community resilience because that's really where I want to drive it home with this. All right, so first off, when you're minimizing and reducing your wasteful energy use, I suggest just going around your house and looking at everything you have plugged in. There's a thing called phantom energy or phantom load, and it affects everybody in this room. You might have a guest room that has a lamp or a CD player plugged in or a TV. Even when these things are plugged in, they're still pulling power even if they're turned off. That is what's called phantom energy. So I suggest you go around and plug things or unplug things that you don't need. And if you want to know how much you're consuming, I did put this calculation up here. That's the calculation you can use to determine how much money you're going to be paying on the rate during a given time. So if we had a 14-cent rate, for instance, that would be the wattage, or I'm sorry, I'm going to skip that. I'm not. But basically, you're being charged 5 to 10% of your electricity. Some people claim that it's more. So Colorado College did a study that a CD/TV combo that was plugged in every day for 24 hours a day cost them $4. And if you multiply that times 12, somebody help me here, 4 times 12 is 38. And so that's just one device. So think about if you had 4 or 5 of those same types of device plugged in. The National Energy, or I think it's the Energy Administration, they said that we're looking at $162 in waste every household in just appliances and things plugged in that you're not using. And so I went around and I did an audit and I just started to think about everything you plug in, and it got a little overwhelming. I stopped at one page, but it's concerning. We have all of these things that we just plug in for convenience, you know, but is it necessary? Are a lot of these things necessary? I'm just not sure. And so again, we have to alter our patterns. So I'm going to go back to this real quickly here and say, looking at this right now, we can look at one appliance. How about the hair dryer? A hair dryer takes 200 watts. And if you run that for a few minutes, you're looking at dollars. So dry your hair with the wind or let it just dry, you know? And also just thinking about some of these other things. So a lot of places out here have irrigation systems, you know, that's also plugged into electricity, and a lot of waste of water when we're not using that towards things that we can eat. And so just, again, just being conscious about what you're using the electric for. Is it really needing to be used? Can you just go home in the evening and play a game, sitting at the table with your family after you cook dinner? outside because you don't want to use the electricity in the summer. So I want to talk to you about altering patterns. I mentioned that seasonal patterns, we could be doing different things. One of the rebates that you can find is smart thermostats. And if you don't have a smart thermostat, you can get one of those. Oftentimes, again, based on your income, it's often free. But the CSU suggests that we set our thermostats in the winter. So coming up this winter, don't set it above 65 if you have heat. And then 60 went away. And some people are like, well, that's just really chilly. But let's get back to where we used to be. Let's put clothes on. Let's layer up. That's practical. We focus on heating the air in our systems nowadays when we really should be heating ourselves. And that too, in the winter, think about the sun on a south-facing wall. You're going to get sunlight. And so in the summer, you might want to leave those blinds closed, but in the winter, open it up so you can get the surfaces of your house heated. That's called radiant heating. Also, seal drafts in the winter, but also in the summer, you might want to open the breeze. Open up your house and get a nice cool breeze through there, and that'll eliminate a lot of the warm air that has collected. And then, just other things like bake in the winter time and open your oven and just stand over it and just say, oh, this is enjoyable. And then one thing that I'm not going to go into, but I want to mention, like every time I ever talk, is rocket mass heaters. Look into them. They're super crazy efficient. We've got some permitting huddles to get over, but this might be a really wonderful resource for us in the future that uses a low amount of fuel. And and like in the summer, fan yourself. I think Becky has a fan here today. You're just trying to change your temperature, not the air. And I talked about this with a zero waste home. So passive design is really an important concept in permaculture because, again, it takes us away from using the energy. Instead, utilizing the sun, utilizing the wind energies the way that we should. So that is the orientation, like I said, south-facing wall. This is up here on the left side is south-facing. And as you notice in the diagram, they have some trees right there outside of the window. I recommend, if you have a south-facing window, to plant deciduous trees there. And I say deciduous because in the summertime, you want the shade, but in the wintertime, when the leaves fall off, you have the sun coming through. So it's just really about design, permaculture design. And another thing that I will say with this as well is the whole system is, again, reliant without any heat or cool. Now, you can have heating systems and cooling systems and still operate in a passive design system in your house to alleviate, again, having to use a lot of energy consumption. And right now, I think, because Manitou Springs is a Tree City, USA, if you're a Manitou Springs resident, you can get a $100 voucher towards a tree. So plant a tree next year. All right, and then the last part I wanted to mention was community resilience. And a lot of the things that I had talked about with AI, about all these data centers and all this new storage, and it's just so much vastness, and we can't get away with it. I mean, you pull it up everywhere now, and we're inundated with, let me do this for you. But we need to step back and start thinking for ourselves, because we're going to lose our critical thinking if we are reliant on these systems. And not only that, humans are meant to solve problems. We're meant to have complex ideas, and we've never, even as children, we didn't want the parents telling us how to solve it. We wanted to figure it out for ourselves, and we should still have that. And that means getting together and learning skills that don't require the technology. We can rainwater harvest. Remember what I said about water? That's an energy. We can grow our own food. Food is the energy that we need to survive. That could be skill building too. A lot of people don't realize you can grow food out here. It's just, you need careful design. And also, if you're in a hill belt like me, you need a greenhouse. But it needs to be adequately designed, and it can recycle these resources too. And that's another thing in permaculture is we really want to reduce waste. We want closed loop systems because waste is just a resource in the wrong place. And then the last thing is composting. We brought cuties here today, and there's a bag right beside it. If you enjoyed one today, please put it in the bag for compost. One of the highest energy wastes we have in our society right now is the land waste and food waste. And that is also a huge contributor to greenhouse gases. So if we can get our communities, again, harvesting rainwater so we're not reliant on the Colorado River, which is 187 miles away, or the Arkansas River, which pumps, to us. We need to start learning new techniques and new design. I can promise you 100 years ago, none of your grandparents had gym memberships. They moved their body, and that's what you should do when you wake up. Be on a mission. This is life. Don't think that you have to have somebody else telling you what to do all the time. And also, do yourself a favor. If you can't grow food in your yard or you don't know how to, volunteer at a farm, local farm. There's 2 here that we're partners with, Flying Pig Farm in Manitou, and also Vermejo Community Garden, a really lovely inner city garden that's doing some wonderful things with the community, classes too. And then buy local. So I'm not sure if any of you understand what a community supported agriculture is, but they are usually small farms that will give their community members a share if you support them in the beginning of the season. And I think Becky can account to this. It's really wonderful food. And then it kind of gives you an idea of, wow, I can grow all this here because this was grown here. So it's a nice way too of learning, because I came here not knowing how to grow food, but permaculture really showed me the way. And engage with your permaculture community. You'll meet some of the best people. You'll try some of the best foods, and you get together, and we have community potlucks, but we also do what we're doing today. We're standing up for things that we want to talk about, and we're getting together, and we're creating new ideas. Maybe not the solution for everyone, but it can be a great solution that moves us into living in more alignment with nature. And that's all I have for you all today. And we're going to be moving into a Q&A. And I have a couple panelists with me that I wanted to introduce. And I'll themselves a little bit, but I brought them in because I want other people to have engagement too with the public, not just me, because I don't know everything, and I'm going to be clear, I was very vague with the energy, but it's supposed to be just a picture of how we need to move back and slow down, and we can do this collectively, and it can help us in the long run, because simple is actually pretty lovely. So, yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself, Scott?
Hi, my name's Scott Harvey. Been an advocate for energy solutions for a long time. I actually just spent the past 2 years building my own house, and I was able to put in energy features I liked and a few that I couldn't employ, but it was certainly an adventure, and I can talk more about that as we go.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, and my name is Becky Elder. I'm the executive director of Pikes Peak Permaculture, a lifelong Colorado organic gardener, and also a lifelong environmental activist, among other things. And I totally neglected to introduce you, Allie, as a permaculture designer and a permaculture teacher and the podcaster for Peak Environment, one of them. So I apologize.
Oh, don't apologize. I was just excited. I jumped right in. Well, thank you both for joining here. And I was going to look to see if we had any questions. We're also live right now with questions. So if you're listening and you have any questions that you want to ask, or anything that you just want to talk about anymore, please do put a description in the comment section. And also, I want to open the floor to anybody here today that wants to give a comment or ask a question about anything that we had or I had mentioned.
You mentioned so much.
Go to the mic there.
Oh, the microphone is right up here if you want to ask a question.
Please identify yourself.
Judith Rice Jones, significant as the last person who actually knew Palmer. But I'm sorry that all of you weren't yesterday at the city council meeting. They really shamed our Colorado Springs utilities for what they're trying to do with almost punishing people for having solar. And that makes so much sense in today's world. I'm living in Colorado, where one of the features we have is sun, just so many days out of the year. I was sort of amazed, because normally I trust the utility department. So I suggest that everyone look into that, because that is devastating, to penalize people who've invested in having solar on their homes. So anyway, that's just the thing.
Judith, I have a question for you. Did you subscribe to a solar garden?
For the neighbors, I subscribe to the Solar Neighbors, which is a group that's addressing this kind of pushback against solar from utilities department. And I don't really understand why they feel like they're going to lose money by not using gasoline or some other nasty thing. So, and on the positive side, the city is actually looking now at having a citywide system for trash and recycling. Hopefully they will also add composting. And one of the systems they're looking at is Fort Collins. I encourage you to look at theirs. It's municipal. It includes composting, recycling, and trash. And a lot of places that do that, I don't know specifically about Fort Collins, but where my daughter and family live in California, the compost is provided free to the Parks Department. And we know our Parks Department, like many of our departments, are facing cost things. So having more compost, that will save them money in water. So there are a lot of things that make common sense. One wonders why we aren't using the common sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. I'd like to, while we were at the Mountain Town Climate Summit 2030, the Prime Minister of Uruguay came. That country, little country of Uruguay, is now 99% renewable energy. They went through the whole process to get off of fossil fuels. And I would tell this to Colorado Springs, because they are generating so much, mostly solar. They do wind, but mostly solar, I believe. They are now selling their energy, their abundant energy, to neighboring countries. Mm-hmm. So Colorado Springs, if we became generating solar, allowing the solar, they'd have more energy to sell. I'm not home right now. I have solar panels. They are generating, and CSU is selling that energy to someone else because I'm not using it. We could do that on a larger scale. I have always felt that human scale, like Allie says, is something that permaculture is about, keeping things small and manageable. If everyone that had a good aspect to the sun for solar had solar, rather than big farms, even though we have them now, a big solar farm is an industrialized concept. Great big, generate a lot of energy and then sell it to people. If everyone had their own solar system on their house, we could generate the same amount or more energy. And if my system went down, then I could go to Sierra and go, Sierra, can I plug into your system? And while I'm fixing my system. I mean, if my system goes down, CSU isn't going to pay for it. So I don't understand their thinking about, because if they did that to me, I'd be paying more for the electricity than what I was using when I got solar. So anyway.
I think it would be interesting to know whether Uruguay, if they got 70% renewable energy, what parts of their society did they achieve that in? More in the rural areas or the urban areas? More in the residential areas or in the industrial or commercial areas? Where did they succeed, and where were the hurdles for not succeeding in other sectors of the
They have 99%.
99%?
Yes, you should have been there with us, Scott. Mm-hmm. It was amazingly inspiring. And, it was such a fabulous event, and there was one person from Colorado Springs, one person. There was one person from the city administration in Manitou. It's like, we got to educate ourselves, people. Things are happening, and if we don't break out of the box that they want to keep us in, how are we going to know? And you were talking passive. Passive is huge. Scott has a brand new house that he has built, energy efficient. I have a over 100-year-old house that I'm retrofitting as fast as I can, and I'm also not a woman of substantial means, so I have to do these things in small human scale, slow and steady wins the race. So my most recent success was to stucco my house and add an inch of insulation to it. In permaculture, you learn, like, insulation is one thing, thermal mass is another, which I would say your design does not show thermal mass, which is very important. The thermal mass is what absorbs that warming energy and then returns it after night. Thermal mass is also what happens when you get a heat island from chopping down all the trees and all the cement in the buildings soak up the heat, and then it's 11 o'clock at night and it's still 85 degrees outside your building. Okay. I think I've said enough about that.
I wanted to add a note to your earlier comments about data centers. Someone said that the data centers could consume 500 megawatts, or one smaller, 150 megawatts. That needs to be put into perspective, because Colorado Springs Utilities generates less than 1,200 megawatts of electricity. So a 500 megawatt data center is going to consume roughly half of what Colorado Springs Utilities can generate. And I think, data centers are wonderful. They employ a few folks. The economic development people will say, oh, it creates jobs. Oh, a couple dozen jobs. Yeah, jobs during construction. Yes, jobs somewhere else for the manufacture of all this equipment and stuff. Yet, to allow a data center to come online and then drive up the electric rates of every other business and residence in town, I don't think is economic development. It's could be called socialism, because we're perhaps contributing to the lower cost for this data center to operate. My personal opinion is these data centers that are consuming so much electricity build their own power plant. You can do a combustion turbine like Colorado Springs Utilities did, 6 of them downtown. Make them do this. Don't spread the cost of electricity expense onto the whole community. Make the user pay for it, because their use is extreme. It's not like a small retail center being built or whatever that will employ many people. With jobs and taxes and stuff like that. We have a data center which is good tax development, but it's not really that good economic development when you consider how the costs are shared.
Well said, Scott.
Yeah, I'm glad you just brought that up too, because a lot of municipalities as well are seeing the strain on the energy sector, so they're requiring in some municipalities for these data centers to have their own energy source. One that they're going towards are these things called small nuclear reactors, and they're very, very small systems, and that just becomes another hazard for us to have in our environment. And I do see that, there are maybe some benefits, but we have gotten to the part where now we're, again, out of critical thinking and allowing these machines to tell us what we need to do next. But that's where you all come in that are listening. Again, Colorado Springs Utilities is citizen-owned, and if you go to the council boards, like Judith and I watched it yesterday, you can watch them online. It's very informative, but also it makes you realize that you do have power in what you say, and you do have a right, because this is your utility company as well. And I encourage everybody to start attending them and listening up, because if we don't, this demand and these blackouts or these rate changes are going to really affect us dramatically. And I don't know if it's economically justified in our region. Did you have a question, Judith?
Unfortunately, I don't remember the date, but the federal government passed a law at least 10 years ago, maybe 15, called Community Right to Know, SARA Title III. And part of that SARA Title III was an annual reporting requirement for almost all industry, and they were supposed to report anything that they send out to the air, water, or land. And a lot of our high-tech industries are affected by that. And one of them in particular, and I'm sorry, I don't know anything about the science behind that, is Microchip. And Microchip in Colorado Springs is a big company, and they recently enlarged with, I think, money from the city. And Microchip is one of the worst in terms of the use of water. And this I don't understand, so I probably shouldn't even say it. But something about the way that they use water, it has to be treated more than other water before it can be reused, and I don't understand exactly what that is. But to me, it's really disturbing that we passed this SARA Title III, Community Right to Know. Every year, there's a toxic release inventory, and you can go to look at industries, but I don't see anybody reporting on it or looking at it. And I think you have to also know something. But the one thing I see over and over again that AI uses a lot of water for cooling. And I also follow the fact that they still haven't decided about the Colorado River, where 70% of our water comes from, and that still is in debate. And in our section, we seem to be losing out to the lower section of the Colorado River. So any way we can look at saving money just seems to me to make common sense. So I will write and ask my council people why we aren't reporting annually on the toxic release inventory and how much companies like Microchip and AI are contributing to that.
Thank you, Judith.
Yeah, as Headwaters, we have a law that's, I don't know when it was around, probably early 1900s, that's called first in right, first in use.
Before then.
Way before then, probably. And basically, it means that we need to utilize resources appropriately so so that the water can pass through and be clean. But I question the data centers being right for our community because, like you said, the water, it's a lot of water. Aurora right now is building what they call a super scale site. And I don't even want to talk about the energy, and I don't want to talk about the water, but I can talk about the 1,300 acres it took to build this, and that these companies aren't Colorado companies. The money's not going to stay here. And it's just kind of like foreign entities coming and growing food in our country. There's no restraints, and I don't find that to be comforting. So again, go to City Council and make a voice if you agree with what we're saying today. Yeah.
And I would say to people who are listening to this, like, wow, I'm really upset now. But, there are things that you can do. When you had your list up there, I was trying to count how many of those things I have. Most of those things I don't have in my house, in my kitchen. I live very low scale. It's human scale. I have a very small house, which helps me be low scale because I have no room, barely enough for me and my husband. But there are things you can do. You can buy your food local. You said everything I thought I could say. You had already said it by the time we got here. But I would like people to feel empowered about changing your life. Some people may not even realize how much hooked into a consumer culture they are just to live there every day. I have a good friend, one of my best friends, who eats something from her garden every day. I do that too. Judith, I think you do that too. A lot of the people of permaculture I know, they do that too. It doesn't mean they have huge gardens or they're a farmer. It's like they know what's growing on their land. They know what's edible. I am at the point now where I'm harvesting my lamb's quarter, which is technically a weed. It's a delicious weed. It's a willing weed. It grows every year. I never have to plant it, but I'd like to take it and dry it, and then I can have energy, because food is the easiest energy for us to get from the sun. The whole world runs on the sun energy. So I can have lamb's quarter in my soups or in my smoothies all through the winter, and I'm eating something from my land. I also grow goji berries in a area the size of half a car, and I have goji berries, so vitamin C. I don't have to go to natural grocers, a place I love to buy vitamin C because I have vitamin C. So these things of providing for your own sustenance feed you in other ways. If you're a gardener, you're out on your land, you're getting your vitamin D, which as older people, I see a few older people I know in the room, we need more vitamin D. I try and go outside every day just so I can get the blessings of the sun, which, on a winter day, the sun feels so good. And so I try and do that. And so you develop these mental and physical steps in your everyday that impact your life in positive ways. And you can forget about the vitamin C. You could just be eating goji berries, So, let's talk about what people can do. I have lived in Colorado all my adult life. I've never had air conditioning. I still don't have air conditioning because knowing just basic building skills like the flow of air and with the dry air, do we really need air conditioning? And if you're in your own, manufactured climate every day, your body doesn't have to work. Your body has systems to cool itself, and if we don't use that, do we lose out? Does our body lose out? Oh, I'm sorry, I'll be quiet now. We have a question.
But as you speak, I'm thinking about what I teach French at UCCS, and I have a course on sustainability in the French-speaking world, which is a fun way to talk about sustainability. And of course, when you talk about how we can change our lives in ways that live more sustainably. If you put that next to the data centers being built, the students feel like, I can make no difference. I cannot have enough of an impact by eating some local food compared to the impact of, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, the impact of a data center now being built in the region for the water and the energy use. So it's hard to convince sometimes. I'm not saying they're not willing, they're not interested in adapting and changing and living more sustainably. They are. Also, recycling for students, often they live in apartment buildings that do not provide recycling, much less composting. So there's a lot of obstacles for young people to live sustainably. I'm just curious what you might say about that.
Not just young people, we all have these obstacles. For one thing, I would say just to do those sort of things, like you see my fan here because I tend to overheat sometimes, those things bless your life on an individual level, and I feel like I can go walk through my neighborhood and I'm not participating in that huge data center. Actually, I think it would have been very polite of the city of Colorado Springs to ask us if we wanted that. I haven't talked to one person who's going, yeah, hot dang, we've got a data center that's going to suck water and energy. So, do it for yourself. The food quality going local is much higher. If someone doesn't have recycling at the place, there's Food to Power. There's Michael, what's his name, in Manitou, who does the recycling. There's people doing it. Always Recycle. He does commercial, small businesses, and he's been around for years. I think he's another Michael. So there are other avenues to do it. And if they're students, the university has recycling. So,
they're not supposed to bring their trash to the
it's a flawed system, isn't it? So maybe that's something that you, as as a facilitator and an instructor, could take to them. This is a program we could do that would help all of our students feel better about themselves, because nobody feels good about throwing stuff away. My husband and I, we have a little basketball size of trash every day. Don't tell people where I live because we share with our neighbors. Because, to pay a huge amount of money, and there are people who load up their trash and they have things outside the trash. We don't do that. So we just, it's networking is also a part of living human scale because we are people of the village. We're not people of the metro. That's why clubs are so appealing. That's why churches are so appealing, and even schools are so, because you have a community. You leave your little community and nobody knows you. Nobody knows you. And if you're not known, you're lonely. So I think there's so many things of going back to a human scale level that benefit us in ways it's not just monetary, it's not just good for the earth, it's good for our soul. We live in a culture that could care less what our soul's doing. They just want our pocketbook and they want our time. Our time is so valuable,
Which is
Yeah.
also energy.
which is also energy. We have another person heading up to the microphone. Thank you for your question, though, because it's not like we have all the answers. We just know we're heading in the right direction for our soul. And to me, AI, it is not anything I even want to participate in. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to speak to my experience of your question and kind of like all of the obstacles that are put in front of us to live more aligned with the planet that we live on, because there's a lot of them. And, you know, initially I was going to college for computer engineering, and I took my first class in AI, and I dropped out of college because I was like, no part of me wants to participate in this. And where I came from, it was just, this is just the way it is. This is just how things are. And that was all I was told. And eventually I realized, you know, I had to look at what my priorities were. And you know, that's a hard process, but it's really worth it because these sacrifices, quote, that I've made since then have turned out to be gifts. And the way that I live now, like, I have 4 young kids, we don't have too much money, blah, 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 but like, we find ways to find the local food, and it's worth the, you know, the extra few miles that I put in. I'm making connections with the people who are growing the food, and it's just changed my life in so many ways, and I'm really grateful for it. So thanks for this conversation, it's awesome.
Thank you, Sierra.
I wanted to revisit your energy audit notion. Pretty much everyone has got an electric meter on the side of their house. And if you look at your electric meter, it cycles between certain data that it's trying to send to the utility. And one of them is probably a 4 or 5 digit thing that logs your kilowatt hours that you've consumed. Okay? And if you can identify that meter that cycles through your meter display, now before you go to bed some night, write down what that kilowatt hour reading is. And the first thing when you wake up in the morning, write down what that kilowatt hour reading is. Subtract the two, and those are the loads that you used while you were sleeping. Now, granted, your refrigerator is important. You can even do this by unplugging that refrigerator for an hour and seeing how much it consumed, or get yourself a little kilowatt meter or whatever. But there's ways to identify some of your electric use habits without paying for an audit, just by understanding what your meter is trying to tell you. And then, like Allie said, look for those ghost loads. Anything with a remote control has a ghost load. I don't think a dumb toaster or can opener or something like that has the smart attributes that would be a ghost load. But you look through your house. All the transformers, the phone chargers, the little USB things you plug into the wall, those are probably consuming electricity, although they're not really functioning at charging something at the moment. So search around and understand what your electric meter is trying to tell you.
Hey, Scott, tell us what a kilowatt is.
It's 1,000 watts, kilo.
Isn't the little thing that you plug your appliances
Oh, a
in?
kilowatt meter. It's a thing that you plug into your wall, and then you plug your appliance or whatever into that device, and it tells you the amps that it's using at any particular moment, the wattage it's using, but it also logs the kilowatt hours consumed since you last plugged it in, etc. So I think they're about $35, but I found out my refrigerator's consuming about a kilowatt hour a day, which I think is above what the sticker that came on the door that I threw away. So I'm not happy with my refrigerator because it's consuming too much.
So I have an interesting story, real quick story to tell you. Dana Meadows, who was a brilliant scientist and environmentalist for sure, she told a story about a subdivision where, for some reason, about half of the houses, the electricity meters were installed in the basement, and about half of the houses, they were installed in the front hallway. And the houses that had the meter in the front hallway used about 30% less electricity.
Because people are aware.
You're aware.
That would be the only difference. That's just like, if you weigh yourself every morning, you probably pay a little more attention to what you eat during the day. If you make a habit of going and checking that electricity meter on a daily basis, it
Very
just naturally will change your paradigm, I think.
That's a good
Thank
point,
you.
Dave. And I
Thank
think
you.
that's kind of where we are too with the awareness factor, just trying to get the information out there so people can make their own decisions, but also know what's happening, because a lot of this information that we're sharing with you today, I had to really dig for it, really dig for it. So,
There's different ways to live.
right.
I have another piece of engineering trivia for you here. Regarding lighting, I'm a big proponent of task lighting because it puts less watts closer to your work surface. That's one thing. But let's talk about your standard ceiling light fixture in a house. If you plug in a 60-watt bulb to that fixture, you get a certain amount of illumination. If you plug another 60-watt bulb into that fixture, you don't get double the illumination, but you've doubled your wattage from 60 to 120. It's kind of a quirk of human perception where it's more of a logarithmic addition. So in how we perceive illumination, etc. So adding that second light bulb, you've only increased your illumination by 20 to 30%, but you've doubled your wattage. So you're better off getting one bigger bulb than two smaller bulbs.
Thank you.
He just saved you guys some electricity right there. Anybody else have any other questions? I don't think that we had anybody.
We don't.
Nope, and anybody online that asked a question. Well,
We have a few who are going to be watching this later, including some of the permaculture people who are doing other things.
and that's and that's okay too to have questions afterwards. If you want to send it to us, you can reach us on pikespeakpermaculture.org, or I have a business card if you'd like to grab that on the way out. If anybody doesn't have any questions, I did have, and I did not look at my notes the whole time, so I was a little sporadic, so I apologize about that. But we can always talk more if you want to know about anything else. But I did want to leave you with one lasting sentence or a few sentences here, just because I feel like from what I've heard everybody saying, I think this is relatable, but we stand at a turning point right now, not just in how we power our lives, but in the way that we perceive our place within the living systems that sustain us. The old story of extraction and exhaustion has run its course. We must continue to gather together to explore new narratives, one rooted in reciprocity, resilience, and regeneration. There is a dire need to stop the endless growth scheme that we are in and to transition to living within our means, prioritizing health and well-being. Thank you.
Amen.
Thanks, Allie.
Very good. Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much to Dave Gardner, too,
Thank you.
Studio 9 for recording this session today. And again, it will be on Peak Environment podcast here soon if you'd like to revisit what we talked about today. And please share. Thank you.
You can also sign up for Pikes Peak Permaculture over here if you'd like.
Yeah.
And be sure and get a little tangerine in the back.
Thank you all very much.
You can have 2 or 3. Actually. 2 or 3.